You are living in the most dangerous time in American history.
We won't take a single back step.
Former professional basketball player is now the Republican Party's choice.
Can you imagine Royce White, the U.S. Senate?
White won the endorsement on May 18th with 67% of the vote.
There's nothing that guarantees we win, but I guarantee you if we lose, we will die. Welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio, powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us. Help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And today is Wednesday, January 22nd, year of our Lord, 2025. I already said this is episode 239. Is that right? Episode 239. And we're getting right back into another reaction show. Monday, we skipped the podcast because it was a weird day. Inauguration was in the middle of the day. I usually film in the morning, so film a podcast before the inauguration. You miss all the good stuff, and all of a sudden, You're talking about a bunch of nothing. So now we got a bunch of good inauguration material to talk about and to go over. I almost did a special post-inauguration show yesterday, but I thought we'll just save it for today. The deed is done. Donald J. Trump has been sworn in as the 46th president of the United States.
47th.
The deed is done. Donald J. Trump has been sworn in as the 47th president of the United States of America. That was an homage to the illegitimate Joe Biden regime. But, we got a lot of work to do, a heavy haul, and I like a lot of what was done in terms of executive order in the first day. A lot of people are losing their minds about these executive orders. Things needed to be done, and they will continue to need to be done. And, I say executive order it up. I posted on X, in capital letters, executive order. Absolutely. It's not fascist. It's not tyrannical. It could be tyrannical. It can get tyrannical. There are situations and circumstances where the American people should reject executive order from the president or a president in theory. But we're not at that stage right now. We all know what needs to be done. This country's in shambles. It's weakened. It's been probably intentionally weakened by people from within, some of which was indicated by Joe Biden handing out a bunch of pardons. Dr. Fauci got a pardon. The January 6th committee got a pardon. General Milley got a pardon. A cast of usual suspects that we've talked about on the podcast for the last year or so, and even on to InfoWars and Fearless with Jason Whitlock and other places that I've been. Fauci, Milley, the J6 committee. I mean, these are the usual suspects. And, with all due respect, I think they're all fucking assholes. I mean, I really do. And I think a lot of what they've done should be considered criminal. So it makes sense that Joe Biden would pardon these people. And, you even see some of the Democrats going after Joe Biden saying, him doing this is a sign that these people committed crimes, that they're guilty. If they didn't do anything wrong, then why is he giving them a pardon? Yeah. Well, two things. Again, I always do the two things can be true. I think it's an important exercise. Two things can be true. One, these people are guilty of crimes. There's no negotiation about that. They've done some criminal stuff. Second is Joe Biden and the rest of the establishment at that level understands the type of lawfare culture that has broken out in this country. So whether these people committed crimes or not, Joe Biden is well within sane and rational thought to give them a preemptive pardon because he knows what they tried to do to us. I mean, to expect anything different or to look at it any different is to be naive about what the situation really is politically in this country. Of course, he gave people pardons who he knows Donald Trump would target or would go after for their crimes, whether they did it or not. And I'm not saying, obviously, we have to be very careful when we cast guilty verdicts on people who have not seen their day in court. Sometimes it's necessary. Very, very seldom should the American people or the general public cast a guilty verdict on somebody who has not seen their day in court. And as we've come to know, even having a day in court comes with a grain of salt because the courts are corrupt. So, this is what happens when the justice system is undermined. And it didn't surprise me one bit to see him pardon any of the people that he pardoned. Okay, fair play to him. They had a play, they had an agenda, they ran the play, they ran the agenda, they tried to take it as far as they could. Now we got the football back, and in the last days, they tried to protect the people who did the scam with them. Something that we should remember. I mean, what it tells you is, despite the sort of no honor amongst thieves spirit that you see often in the Marxist and progressive left, because essentially they are thieves, right? I mean, that's just, they're stealing from one another. They're stealing from the people. They're thieves. They're dishonest. They're liars. Even though there's a code of dishonor amongst them, Joe Biden exhibited some loyalty. And the MAGA movement would do well to take note. Yeah. And when they try and shame us for saying, oh, you're just defending him because he's your guy, or you're just defending him because, yeah, you're damn right we are. Yeah, you damn right. There are times where people will do something wrong, where people will make mistakes, and sometimes it warrants a harsh penalty. I think in general we should be taking a second look at some of the. I was watching the other day. I came across some Donald Trump, and somehow the YouTube algorithm kicked up to me. Joey Merlino was talking about Donald Trump. He had taken a picture with Donald Trump. And I like watching some of these old mob guys talk about the mob world. It's just, we came up with a bevy of legendary mob films, right, that tried to, let's say, reenact or recreate what the mob world was like. Some of the all-time greatest films. I mean, if you pick an all-time greatest film list out and The Godfather isn't on it, or Goodfellas, or some of these legendary mob movies, it's not a real list, right? For some reason, in American culture, we had this infatuation and interest in the mob, and part of it is because of the amount of power that they were able to acquire, but part of it is also this sort of mystery about a world and a culture and a life that happened behind the scenes, kind of under the surface, where people had rules and there were ideas like loyalty that were somewhat observed. Now, and what we come to find out later is a lot of these mob guys end up turning informant as the pressure from law enforcement and some of these government agencies increased, and a lot of them, broke the oath that they swore. It's referred to as snitching or ratting or cooperating or whatever the case may be. Anyway, a lot of these guys now have these podcasts where they talk about what the mob world was like. And it's an interesting thing because the mob touched so many facets of our society, which in many ways is a microcosm of politics, right? I mean, politics is the much bigger version of Mafia. And that's why it interests me, anyway, because, well, number one, I'm from the neighborhood. So, St. Paul is an old gangster town itself. It's kind of built by the mob. It was the runaway from Chicago for all the gangsters that got in trouble in Chicago or had problems in Chicago and whatnot. It was one of the stopovers here in the Midwest. So, we grew up hearing our own mob stories in the Midwest. But what interests me about it so much right now is it's a clear microcosm of American politics and global politics. It's kind of the smallest version of organized crime. The biggest version of organized crime are, multinational corporations that are involved on both sides of what we would call a moral line, right? We do legitimate business in oil and resources, but we're also involved in shady black bag deals for guns and steel, right? It's not even so much behind the scenes. That's more so your traditional uniparty politics there in D.C. We passed a continued resolution. There's about $2 trillion in it. And everybody knows it's going to get spread around to the military-industrial complex contractors. And somebody's going to end up with a bomb up their ass at some point. And we all know it. But it's like, hey, we got to stay safe from those terrorists. But anyway, so I got off on a tangent. But the point is, the mob thing interests me because it touched so many facets of life, even sports, right? There's me, I'm a lifelong athlete. Grew up loving the NBA, and you hear a lot of stories about games being fixed, whether it's basketball, but a lot of professional sports, fights being fixed. I'm a mixed martial artist. So the whole mob story interests me. But I came across a video where Joey Merlino had taken a picture with Donald Trump, and they gave him a bunch. Joey Merlino's allegedly the acting boss of the Philadelphia crime family. Who would know? I don't know. Shit. I'm just watching what the guys say. I mean, not really that important to me one way or another. But it was interesting because, he made a great point that, and this is the whole reason I brought the mob thing up, was to highlight this undermining of our justice system. He made a great point on how these informants really work in these federal indictments, these RICO indictments. RICO indictments, running a continual criminal enterprise. A lot of this is what Giuliani, who I met and I like Giuliani. He's a good dude. But this is what him and some of the other federal government used to go after the mafia and other organized crime, back in the 70s and 80s. And essentially, at the end of the day, you could look back on it in retrospect and say, hey, Rudy Giuliani and the government were right, because these guys were actually doing the crime. If he had found out, if it came to the surface that they had essentially thrown out the Constitution and used this tool called the RICO indictment to go after these guys and they were actually innocent, well, then we'd be saying something different right now. But as it is, these guys actually were guilty, and they were guilty in a major way. And so, the backstory is, the RICO indictment allowed the government to be able to clump a bunch of people together in a conspiracy, and they didn't really have to catch you doing a crime. All they had to do was have enough witnesses testify or cooperate or corroborate that you were involved in a crime, or they had to at least have enough evidence to be able to convince a jury, and you would go to jail for the maximum penalty. And they clump everybody together, whether you were the top guy or you were some guy down the ladder that was just running errands. You're all going to jail for heavy time. This was the way that the American government essentially broke the American mafia. And so I was listening to this podcast, is talking about Joey Merlino took a picture with Donald Trump, and there was a big brouhaha about it. This was probably a year back or something like that. And it just dawned on me that even the way we went about prosecuting people undermined justice. It did, even though they were right. I mean, even though these mafia guys were really, racketeering, they were doing hits, they were killing folks, they were selling drugs, they were, involved in all these criminal things. The process, by way of, you can essentially just say that you saw somebody commit a crime, or you were involved with somebody committing a crime, and that would be enough to get you prosecuted. I mean, this is a miscarriage. It really is a miscarriage of justice, even if they're right. That's a hard concept to understand, right? I think it's tough for people to understand citizenship and the rule of law and justice at that level, where you say, even if I'm guilty this is why a lot of defense attorneys, this is why the oath, or the attorney-client privilege between defense attorneys and their clients are what they are, because there's what actually takes place, right? Let's say I walk into a flower shop, and my arch enemy's in there, and I pull a gun and I start shooting him, premeditated for whatever reason, because I'm, sick in the head, fucking psychopath. And but I have to, and I get picked up and arrested because it's on camera, or maybe it's not on camera. There are eyewitnesses. And then I go to hire an attorney, and the attorney is going to tell you right away, he's like, look, you got to tell me the truth about what happened. I'm going to defend you anyway, right? I'm going to defend you whether you did it or not. And part of that is because the game that's played out in the justice system, in the court of law, the criminal justice system, is just as much about both sides having to provide adequate evidence and go by a legitimate process to keep the integrity of the justice system. And whether you did it or not, there is a process that happens that's meant to uphold the trust and integrity of the justice system. And in a lot of cases, the government has thrown that out. And it didn't just start with Donald Trump. Donald Trump was the sort of flashpoint of an American justice system that has long cut corners and played fast and loose with the truth. And the mob is a great example. I mean, they kind of got its legs really a running when they did this whole RICO thing where, we don't have to really come up with any hardcore evidence. We don't have to catch you with a smoking gun. We don't have to, have you on camera or on tape admitting a crime. We can kind of piecemeal, enough evidence together around you and sort of, fashion it in a way that will make a jury at least think that you are guilty of a crime, and that's good enough. And there are a lot of guys, maybe not in the American Mafia, but I would presume even in the American Mafia, but there are a lot of people who sit in jail cells right now based on illegitimate, RICO indictments, conspiracy charges, right? I mean, anytime you throw the word conspiracy in a legal process, red flags go off in my head because it's like, wait a minute now, conspiracy on one hand, you can't say anything is conspiracy because then you're a conspiracy theorist, yet the government can say that everybody's conspiring anytime they want, and all of a sudden you find yourself in jail for 25 years. It's like, look at the source. I mean, the government conspires a lot, so it's kind of strange to have the government come to, and when you go take a federal case, for example, it is the entire United States government against the individual. Right? If you get indicted, you'll see at the top of the indictment, it says, United States government versus whoever the individual is. Murky shit in here was all I'm saying with the justice system. The murky shit. And I say that because it's going to be a heavy lift to restore the integrity and trust in the American justice system. And I'm not in particular, I'm not particularly in favor of this ongoing tit for tat where we wage lawfare against each other. I think that's going to make matters worse. I really do. A truth commission would be better. Professor Penn talks about truth commissions, and in South Africa they had truth commissions. I think truth commissions would be better. Are there some people that need to be prosecuted? Absolutely. But we're opening a Pandora's box, I think. And the Joe Biden pardons show you that that's coming because they don't trust the judge. It's funny, when push came to shove and Joe Biden had the opportunity to, let's say, reaffirm, kind of uphold his own individual and his Democrat establishment's trust or faith in the justice system, they threw in the towel right away. They didn't say, oh, well, justice will be justice. Let justice take its course. No, then what? No. Pardon, right? I mean, all in one fell swoop. And you know what? Again, the justice system has been so corrupt and them a part of it, it makes complete sense to me. It makes complete sense. So that's my opening shot. We're going to get to some of these reaction videos now. I hope everybody understands what I'm saying. I mean, I deal with the nuance. A lot of people don't like the nuance. They like it here or there. They want me to come on and say, oh, Joe Biden pardoned all these people because they're criminal. Yes, but the American justice system, the integrity of it is in shambles, and we allowed it to get this way. We allowed it to become that. We allowed this to be the norm when it was good for us. when we felt like it was putting some scapegoat criminal in prison. And I want to say this too. Another interest of mine in these mob guys, or these, let's say these, organized crime figures. We got them in the black community as well. Some of them sitting there in ADX. I talked about ADX in one of the last episodes, right? And we talked about the prisons on the last reaction episode. But in ADX is the Supermax facility. And some of our local Midwest gang leaders, Larry Hoover, Jeff Ford, and some others as well, are also locked up in ADX. Kanye West was famous for going to visit Larry Hoover in ADX and trying to get him a pardon, which I don't think that they've been successful in doing. But Kanye West's case that he made was, hey, this guy was a gang leader and in that life was forced to do things that were obviously wrong and criminal and did irreparable damage. People died, people were murdered and killed, but it was a product of a culture that we created with drugs and guns and let's say the social engineering of inner cities, where these guys like Larry Hoover are just as much a product of their environment as needing to bomb Eastern Europe for some obscure national security reason, right? I mean, and people don't want to go to that level. They're like, and that's where the scapegoat really is, and that's what undermines the integrity of our social thought process. That part, that's the thing that undermines our view of citizenship, right? These gangs aren't the same as the military-industrial complex. It's like, excuse me? In fact, if we were to take all of the murders and killings that happened with all of the gangs combined, it wouldn't equal up 1/10, most likely, of what took place there in Iraq or Afghanistan or anywhere else in the world. I mean, we do a lot of killing, which part of the reason why I love Donald Trump is when they said to Donald Trump, oh, Vladimir Putin, he's a killer. Donald Trump responded, well, there's a lot of killers. There's some in our own country. Spot on. There's an authentic guy right there. I can roll with that. But now we have to kind of kind of rethink how we look at crime in the justice system. It's not crime, but the justice system, because again, a lot of these organized crime figures, a lot of these, they become a scapegoat, and you can just feel it if you're really tuned in to the way society and culture works. You can just feel the newspaper, the mainstream media, some of these police departments, some of these district attorneys and judges, getting promotions or getting attaboys for, some collar for some, big time heroin dealer. And, I'm as anti-drug as it gets, so I'm not saying that dealing heroin is okay. It's obviously wrong. But, we got these white collar CEOs in the pharmaceutical business or at the National Institute of Health. I would love to see Donald Trump pull out of the WHO in the opening day. These people are criminals too. I mean, by that standard. So we got to pick which way we're going to fall on the issue. And that's calling the balls and strikes. Part of that is leadership. If we're going to say that anybody who comes to harm American citizen or is responsible for the death of American citizens, but has a sort of license to do it through legitimate, business or regulatory agencies, it undermines justice, guys. I'm just going to tell you. Tanner, you feel me on that?
I understand.
If I'm Pfizer, if I'm one of these big pharma agencies who has a sort of built-in casualty rate of some product that we all agree as the regulatory and federal agencies is okay, we're going to all accept this casualty rate, but then we're going to say that some gang can have an accepted casualty rate in the process of unlawful or criminal behavior, we're walking a tightrope there in terms of integrity. Now, again, we're not saying what these criminals have done or did is wrong, but what I'm saying is the overall integrity, the moral and the ethic is the moral and the ethic. Pfizer was wrong. Big Pharma was wrong. The FDA was wrong. It's just there is no way around it. There's no workaround. They were wrong. Now, the question is, how culpable do we as a society want them to be? I would say we need to up that. I'm not sure where it falls. I'm not sure how intense that punishment and prosecution gets. That would be for other people to weigh in on. But it needs to change. If we're going to hold a man in jail for being a gang leader, and we're going to say that people carried out murders on his word or on his behalf without hardcore evidence in a conspiracy case, but then we find a pharmaceutical company that on the record is responsible for tens of thousands of deaths, and nobody ever sees a single day in prison? I mean, a single day. Okay? Now, again, we locked this guy up for 3 life sentences with no human contact. I'm saying they're not even letting these people communicate with the outer world. They can't write letters. There's no human contact. But these CEOs walk around and they get caught and they get fired, and then they get golden parachutes and severance packages, and they're living in Martha's Vineyard with Obama right next door, and it's kind of like a wink and nod. Yeah, I was responsible for 10, 20,000 people dying or being injured by this product, but hey, that's just part of the business. And it's like, hang on, guys. And this is where I'm just going to say it. A lot of black people, a lot of blacks and Latinos who have been on the wrong end of this pendulum. Not to say that there aren't white gangs, because a lot of people would be probably shocked to realize how many white gangs there actually are in America. There's a lot of white gangs actually. Go to the prison, you'll find that out pretty quick. But those people have been on the wrong side of this double standard, and this is where a lot of blacks and Hispanics are like, "Yo, the justice system's been rigged." Because they deal with that consequence. They deal with that outcome where it's like, you're taking this guy, and treating him like he's and it's just a scapegoat for us to act like we've dealt with the real decay and corruption and wickedness in our society. Again, I'm not saying those people aren't wrong, but I hate scapegoats. I just can't. Scapegoating is the you talk about a great Jewish tradition, okay? The word scapegoat comes from the Jewish tradition Yom Kippur, where the rabbi, the local holy man, would once a year would take a goat, and they would, they would do a ritual with the goat, and they would slaughter the goat, or they would send the goat out into the wild, and it was meant to be a symbol that this goat carried the sins of what going on in the village or in the tribe. Okay, in that case it was more religious, symbolic thing, but at a full scale, functional, societal level, institutional level, this is a problem. Scapegoating is a problem. It just is. Just saying. And it's become integrated into the culture. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I spent 30 minutes on it. We're going to get into the reactions quick. We're going to do some quick hitters. We're going to be out in about an hour, at least hour 5. But the scapegoating is profound. And I don't even want Joe Biden to become a scapegoat. That's where we got to have some sacred honor in the MAGA movement. I don't need Joe Biden to be a scapegoat. He's an asshole. He's a liar. He's been a liar from the very beginning. A lot of Republicans sat by and watched, and I'm more upset with them than I am with the Democrats. And, Hunter Biden, don't let Hunter Biden be the scapegoat. He's a degenerate. He's a crackhead. Yeah. There are a lot of degenerates. A lot of people doing coke out there in D.C. A lot of people doing coke everywhere in the world, truth be told. I don't do coke. I don't do drugs. It's just never been a thing of mine. I'm fortunate and blessed that way. I got my own vices, I like women. There is sin that is according to nature and contrary to nature. When you put illicit substances that change and alter the state of your mind from outside your body, inside your body, that aren't natural to the body, that would be a sin contrary to nature. Having sex with a woman, depending on the type of sex that you have with her, is according to nature. And in the Catholic faith, there's a difference in severity of sin. There are sins this is a very incredible St. Thomas Aquinas contribution to the theology of the Catholic community. There are sins according to nature, and there are sins contrary to nature. Rabid drug use and addiction would be a sin contrary to nature. So that's all I got to say on that. We got to get the justice system back in order. The pardons are to be expected. The MAGA movement should observe some similar loyalty, at least in this first iteration. Loyalty would be there should be some people that get pardons, not we're going to play tit for tat with the lawfare. And that's where you got to be able to call the balls and strikes, right? There are going to be some people that we give pardons to out of loyalty. Fine. We're kind of, hold on, let's back off here and get everybody back to neutral and even. Playing tit for tat with the lawfare, dangerous game, because the pendulum usually swings both ways and you'll be at war forever. Good example is Israel, Hamas, right? Perpetual warfare. We don't like perpetual warfare. Before you know it, you look up and you forget who was actually to blame. It's hard to track. It's hard to keep track of it. And then all of a sudden you get some predator from the outside who comes in and they can make money off of the knowledge that there will be war here. And that you never want. So let's roll the first reaction video.
You're going to do a Sig Heil? You're going to do a Hail Hitler? Or their rebrand a Roman salute from behind the presidential seal of the United States of America? It's on. It's on. And what is so important for us to understand is that as long as we don't give up, it's not over. It's not over. It is not over. Libs of TikTok started crying because I said over the weekend that Donald Trump is a rapist. And they went on Twitter and they went, oh, boo-hoo-hoo. And I said, basically, F you. Cry more. I don't give a shit. Like, you want to support a rapist? That's on you. That's on you. But I don't. And they wanted to call in all of these threats into my office and all this other stuff. I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn.
Three times there, AOC. We got it. You don't give a damn. We just dodged a bullet. I mean, the scary part is these people have been running the country for 4 years, right? And for a long time, actually. This AOC archetype, these people have been running the country. So it's no wonder that Donald Trump has to give executive orders on day one. You see, what happens when you when you leave an untrained dog? I shouldn't say that. Now people are going to say I called AOC an untrained dog. No, I'm talking about the entire Democrat establishment as a whole. Okay, when you leave an untrained dog at home and they tear everything up in the house, the first thing you do when you come in the house is you got to address the most the things that are causing the most problems right away, right? And you got to prioritize, right? I mean, there's going to be some shit that's so messed up, like broken glass. It's like, okay, I'm going to have to replace that. But first, I got to sweep up this glass because it's sharp and I don't want somebody to step on it, cut their foot, right? Or there'll be some open container with liquid in it and it's, tipped over on the counter and it's spilling on the rug. Well, the first thing is I got to pick this up so it don't keep spilling on the rug, right? And then when all else is contained and everything is back in some, relative order, then I'm going to address this untrained dog, right? So some of that happens all at once and a lot of people will give that dog a swift kick or some discipline as they're putting a lid back on things. But, the executive, she just justified the executive orders in this, I don't know, was minute monologue. These people are batshit crazy, okay? Elon Musk, the gesture he made, it was weird. It looked weird, okay? It definitely was on the line, but the thing is, I've done the same thing, waving to a crowd. When we were at the convention, I remember going back and looking at the video. I thank the crowd, the people that endorsed me, and I had my hand over my heart because it was a, very sentimental and emotional thing to have 1,800 delegates of the Minnesota Republican Party say, we want you to represent us. Man, that's like a life's honor. So my hand was on my heart, and then I put my hand out, and as a thank you to the crowd or a wave to the crowd, people could have said, oh, that's a Nazi salute. A lot of people do it. It's just, again, scapegoats, right? The reality is, me and Elon Musk see the world very differently. I am not a transhumanist. I'm not a futurist. I'm not a technocrat. I don't believe in the way that we're headed with AI and robotics and automation. I don't believe in it. I think it's dangerous. I think Elon Musk is on the record saying it's dangerous, although he seems to be benefiting still greatly from its progress. So he and I don't agree on certain things, especially this visa issue. So I don't necessarily trust Elon Musk. I'm just going to say that on the record. I don't trust him. I don't trust his thought process. It's not that I don't trust him personally, because I don't know him well enough personally not to trust him. I don't trust the thought process. But I'm not going to let my distrust for him bring me into some conspiratorial place where now all of a sudden, he's making a Nazi salute when there's no real evidence that he's done that. I'm not buying it. Okay, and even furthermore, what really troubled me about what AOC was saying here is, oh well, it's not over. We got to keep fighting. It's only over when we give up. It's almost, it's as though they've really convinced themselves that they were the victims here. Like they didn't have the power. You guys had the power. You abused the power. You misused the power. You undermined the value of citizenship. Everything that's happening right now has a lot to do with the role that she herself played specifically. I mean, in particular, AOC and her crew. So, you guys wanted to push transgenderism on the whole country, and now you're paying a political price for it. Yeah. You gotta eat that. So let's play the next clip. Speaking of transgenderism, our great producer here, Tanner, is putting us together a nice order here. Here we got the Minnesota legislature, and do they got is the video up there? Can they see it? Just show them the still shot.
Yeah.
Okay. This is what's wrong with the country. And when I talk about an untrained dog tearing the fucking house up when you go away to the grocery store, this is what I mean. These are the things that we have to deal with first and foremost. It's not a knock or a call for violence or to persecute the LGBTQ community or to pretend like the LGBTQ community is the biggest and sole problem in our country, because that would be another scapegoat, right? It's not the biggest or sole issue. It is a disproportionate threat to national security and the overall health of our culture and society, particularly our young people. So it is top on the priority list. Let's just say that. And here's a great example. I mean, this is a man. Okay, and I'm glad we can say that again. Hey, in America, Donald Trump, executive, there are two genders in this country, male, female. Now, you could be a man and be gay. You could be a woman and be gay, a lesbian. You could be a woman or a man and go both ways. You could be a man or a woman and like to dress as the opposite sex. All of that is within your right as an American citizen. But what you can't be is a full-grown man dressed up like half a woman, I guess, really. It's not even dressed up like a woman.
They never try that hard, I swear.
You know what I mean?
No,
and what's crazy is, I mean, what is dressing like a woman? A lot of clothes are androgynous anyway. It's like, what, is wearing a certain cut of jeans, dressed like a woman? Or, now if you're wearing a blouse or a dress, these things are universally considered feminine. But if you're wearing a suit and you're a woman, am I a man? No, you're a woman wearing a suit. There are plenty of women who wear suits. So, the whole thing is kind of obscure and arbitrary and hard to follow anyway, which is intentional. But here you have a man No matter what, you could be a man and like men, you could be a man and like women, you could be a woman and like women, men, you could cross-dress, you could go both ways, you could like it in a group. Whatever it is that you're into, you're still a man or a woman. And now we're going to get back to some sane reality here, because these people tend to show us when this becomes prominent in culture, they're a little bit detached from reality and sanity. It's just what it is. I mean, go ahead, just take a look. This is the representation of the LGBTQ community in a public place at the legislature. If the LGBTQ community that doesn't like being generalized in this way, you all should start to show up at these places and disavow this type of behavior from your fellow community members.
Whose house is this? Whose house is this? You chicken meatball-headed motherfucker. Whose house is this? Whose house is this?
Yeah, nice person.
Yeah, go ahead and kick me out. It'll be on every fucking news organization in the country.
And of course, pause. Now, what sticks out here, Tanner?
The person in the orange shirt is what sticks out to me.
Okay. I mean, more general, but all these people, they pan to the crowd back here, and all of these people have one distinct thing going on. They're all wearing COVID masks. Is it just me? I mean, sometimes I wake up and I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, and you know, democracy, quote unquote, has a way of doing that to you, right? We get a majority of people to say some crazy shit isn't crazy. All of a sudden, it becomes the norm or the standard, and before you know it, the people who aren't crazy in the minority, the minority, who are like, what the fuck is going on here? Now all of a sudden we're crazy. It's like, no, that's why we end up calling the show, Please Call Me Crazy. It's this right here. To me, this is fucking crazy. Why are you all wearing masks that Dr. Fauci has already said had no scientific evidence of working?
Yeah, the CDC has already said that.
What the fuck are you guys doing? You're not even listening to the. First, it was believe the science. You're not even believing the science anymore. This is just an act of like social rebellion, and it looks weird that you're following a guy who has his gut poking out, and he's wearing a pair of pink glasses, reader glasses that aren't even, you know, they can't be prescription, and he's got a bullhorn. And it's just this is weird. And you guys may actually have some real grievances. I don't hear one in this video, and I often don't hear one coming from this community. But I'm not saying you guys couldn't make a legitimate point about a political situation, but you make it ridiculous. You know, you make it ridiculous when you do it like this. It just fucking, this is goofy. This is goofy. And if there were Republicans or MAGA who showed up this goofy, then I'd say it. I'd be like, yeah, yo, that's just fucking goofy, man. You're okay. Let me hear what you got to say. Okay, all that being said, what you're doing is goofy. You know, it's like a badass kid at school makes a good ass point about the way the school is run, right? But it's how you do it, how you go about it. This is not going about grievances the right way. This is theater, and it's intentionally stupid. Keep playing the video.
Do not have quorum. You are not allowed to do this.
Every last one of them's got a mask.
You know it. You're not just going to keep pushing the fucking line. You're just going to keep overstepping your bounds, just like y'all did last session when I had to sit there and listen to y'all motherfuckers talk about what burgers you like instead of giving us equal rights in Minnesota. I'm done with it. I sat through the whole trans refuge thing listening to you fucking lie about my community. I sat and listened to every Culver's fucking bullshit order instead of giving equal rights and bodily autonomy to all Minnesotans. I'm done with it. The Senate threw a big baby fucking tantrum at the end of the session last year. It was a goddamn clown show. And I'm tired of it. If y'all
Does that shirt say transsexual menace?
If y'all aren't going to follow the fucking rules, then neither are we. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. I'm done with it. Get your good glamour shots there, motherfucker. I remember the shit that you said on the fucking floor. I remember the shit that you said. Misgendering leave.
The knuckles say self-love, by the way.
I know. I was just going to say. You know, the knuckles say self-love, transsexual menace. I mean, just give me the next video. I can't waste any more time with this. I don't want to comment on this anymore. It's ridiculous. Okay, here's some, okay. Now we got some inauguration footage. Pause. Okay, number one, if Barron Trump wants to be the president of the United States one day, it's going to happen. Let's just put that on out there. I'm calling that now. Barron Trump, if he wants to, will be the president of the United States one day. I think the guy's like 6'7". As a kid, he's about 6'7".
Yeah, he's tall.
He might be like 6'9". He's a tall young man, and he's got his shit together. I mean, they are grooming this kid to be a world beater. How old is Barron?
I think he's 21. Let me double check that. He is 6'7", by the way.
6'7". Okay, so he's about an inch shorter than me, but this guy's this kid's this young man's impressive. And
he's 18.
He's 18.
18 years old. 6'7" and 18 years old.
Well, I was 6'8" at 18, but he's impressive. I mean, this kid is going places. All right, that's just what it is. So you Democrats, you better look. You better get your shit in order. I don't know, because when Barron comes, it's on, right? I mean, and just look at this kid's demeanor and poise, and man, he's like got a magnifying glass on him so big. There must be all kinds of stress and just kind of the psychological pressure, especially as an 18-year-old in today's society. Can you imagine? In today's society, it's not like he's not jacked into all the same things other 18-year-olds are jacked into, social media and whatnot. And his dad's always being attacked and smeared, and his family is always being attacked and smeared, and he's just got a lot of poise. I think the young man is going places. I think if he wants, he's going to be president of the United States. I think when he turns 35, like, he is on course to be the youngest president in the history of the United States of America, if that's what his ambition is. Now, the reason I pulled this video is because whoever posted it said that that Barron, whoever made the seating arrangements, was going on Barron's list because they sat him next to Elon, and he looked a little visibly irritated, Elon is a weird character. He is. He's a goofy, kind of strange, oddball character, which is why you got to take the gesture with a grain of salt, because he's awkward. He's an awkward guy. Anybody who says that he's not awkward is lying. Of course he is. He would probably say that. I don't know if he's ever been on camera admitting it and kind of just saying, hey, I'm awkward or whatever, but he's awkward. But I don't know, just a little insider MAGA baseball, two different generations. Elon Musk was obviously the one to help us secure, one of the people to help us secure the election. And, we got internal things that have to be sorted out in the MAGA movement, but you kind of get a look at the next generation or the future with Barron there, who's basically like, all right, the theatrics are for this guy, which is cool to see. The future is in good hands. We talk a lot about the young generation and some of these young people and how, how wayward they've become and how bad things have gotten culturally. Barron Trump, testament of Melania and Donald Trump's parenting. This young man is impressive. His demeanor. He carries himself more serious than a lot of the people who are in office there now. And I'm not saying that you should, follow a person or support a person who's in politics or a candidate just because of how they carry themselves, because people can lie. We know that. But there is a sort of temperance that as an 18-year-old kid, I mean, even if you said on worst case scenario, Donald Trump and Melania have groomed him to carry himself like a world leader, he's doing it. And there are a lot of kids who wouldn't be able to do it, right? There are a lot of kids whose parents would tell them, to do a thing, and they don't have the the sort of intestinal fortitude to be able to follow through on a thing like that. So shout out to Barron Trump. Going to be president one day. I'm calling it now. Let's get the next video.
In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops.
Stop. I can't take this one anymore. This was, as I pulled it from the internet, Alex Jones reported on it. This was a preacher, somebody at the church ceremony who went up there and gave a woke mea culpa is what this really is. But Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Melania obviously very irritated by this going down. And I'm not sure how this person got on the speaking list. I'm sure somebody's getting a real tongue lashing for this going on. But it's just the same old song and dance. This is what AOC was saying. This is what the guy with the pink glasses at the Minnesota legislature was saying. It's the same. What it shows is that maybe they are going to double down. Maybe they're going to try and run this again in 26. You're probably going to, what you're going to see is a huge fight go down now between Democrats like Fetterman, who, want to at least pull the Democrat Party to a more palatable, sane, rational place that they could sell to the American public, and the AOCs, right? You're going to see an inner fight go down between them, like what went down between the Donald Trumps and the George Bush faction of the Republican Party, and it's going to continue to go on. So, you got a kind of two-party, four-player jump ball in American politics. Next video. You gotta love Donald Trump. Pause it. That's enough of that one. You gotta love Donald Trump, man. He's having fun with it. He's a beacon of optimism. Really, I know people hate him; they don't like him, but man, the guy has fun with. I don't know if anybody remembers that Joe Biden speech that he did with the Marines in front of the White House with the big red light, the daunting red light behind him. But that's just the difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden and those two types of politicians right now in our nation's history is, Donald Trump being very graceful in victory. He could have easily stood in front of the White House and made some fierce, kind of intense, aggressive threat is what Joe Biden did when he did it. It was a threat to the American people who wanted to deny vaccines or, that's what it really was about. It was about COVID at the time for the most part. And so, Donald Trump, much different, obviously much more fit. I think we are vindicated in thinking that, or saying that Donald Trump is much, much more fit than Joe Biden is. We see the footage of Joe Biden leaving Washington, D.C. Frail. Very frail. Donald Trump still got some moves. Still got some moves in him. Still getting after it a little bit. You know what I mean? So you got to be a fan of Donald Trump. I mean, even if you dislike him and disagree with him, you got to admit that this guy has taken on the attack of a century. He beat it, and he still has the good spirit to wear a smile on his face through it all. I mean, and Melania could be as bitter and as angry as anybody. I mean, they attacked her husband. They tried to kill him. You know, they drug her through the mud. Still has a smile on her face. Next video.
Once we gene sequence that cancer tumor, you can then vaccinate the person, design a vaccine for every individual person to vaccinate them against that cancer. And you can make that vaccine, that mRNA vaccine, you can make that robotically, again using AI, in about 48 hours. So imagine early cancer detection, the development of a cancer vaccine for your particular cancer aimed at you, and have that vaccine available in 48 hours. This is the promise of AI and the promise of the future.
Yeah, I don't like it. And this is the real danger, right? And this is where the MAGA movement is even going to have to call some balls and strikes, you know, ask some tough questions, and there are going to be some tougher answers. You know, how far are we willing to go to save people from cancer? And is it a predicate? We see a lot of sci-fi films, sci-fi stories, novels, where medicine was the predicate to the apocalypse, right? The ambition for human health and well-being became the predicate for, the end of civilization. One of them was, the movie, what's the movie? I Am Legend, right? In I Am Legend, they tried to come up with a vaccine like this for cancer, and it ended up causing a zombie apocalypse. Everybody who was infected with it became zombies. And it spread, and, the Will Smith was the star role in that movie, but, a lot of damage gets done. Now, is that accurate? No. Do we know that vaccines couldn't potentially harm people in a way that we don't expect yet? No. If all things end up equal and we actually can detect cancer early, there are probably some holistic methods we could do to combat that cancer as well. I don't like the idea of AI supercharged vaccines. We're already seeing some evidence that some of the vaccine material and some of the COVID shots, may have a self-assembling nanotechnology. At least that's what some people are reporting under a microscope. Do I know for sure? No, I haven't looked at it under a microscope. Maybe I should spend some time and go and do that myself with somebody who knows better than I do. But this is scary shit. Technology is the next hill to die on. I've been saying it. Larry Ellison, very successful tech businessman, Oracle. Obviously, they're in the White House, a supporter of Donald Trump, or being brought in, I believe, to help out with things. And we got to be mindful of this stuff. Not saying Larry Ellison's a bad guy. A lot of these tech guys believe in technology to a fault. And, we got to call those balls and strikes in the future.
You are correct. We undertook this responsibility with an obligation to the troops to do right by them for our warfighters. And what became very evident to us from the beginning, there was a coordinated smear campaign orchestrated in the media against us. That was clear from moment one. And what we knew is that it wasn't about me. Most of it was about President Donald Trump, who's had to endure the very same thing for much longer amounts of time. And he endured it in incredibly strong ways. So we, in some ways, knew it was coming. We didn't understand the depth of the dishonesty that would come with it. So from story after story in the media, left-wing media, we saw anonymous source after anonymous source based on second or third-hand accounts. And time again, stories would come out and people would reach out to me and say, you know, I've spoken to this reporter about who you really are, and I was willing to go on the record. But they didn't print my quote. They didn't print any of my quotes. Or I've worked with you for 10 years, or I was your accountant, or I was your chief operating officer, or I was your board member, or I was with you on 100 different tour stops for Concerned Veterans for America. No one called me. No one asked about your conduct on the record or off the record. Instead, a small handful of anonymous sources were allowed to drive a smear campaign, an agenda about me, because our left-wing media in America today, sadly, doesn't care about the truth.
Well, amen, sir. Yeah. You know, the Me Too movement and using these sexual allegations against men who threaten the status quo, against men in general. Let's layer it up. The outer layer is using the Me Too movement and sexual allegations against men in general. Right? And a lot of times men have these allegations levied against them specific, you know, just solely for interpersonal reasons. You know, he doesn't want me anymore, or, you know, he's cheated on me, or, you know, feels slighted in some way. And there's a lot of that goes on. And then there's weaponizing it politically for political purposes and going after men who threaten the status quo. And the status quo in this country is a feminist-driven political culture. Now, underneath it, it's really a communist and Marxist political culture that has hijacked modern women to be the vanguard, the sort of driving force, the engine, the catalyst for their ambitions. But all in all, you know, that they have become that. And it's why every time one of these men stands up that actually threatens to destabilize the status quo, the attack is always the same. I mean, it's just, you can just count on it. It's actually becoming comical. I don't want to say comical because it's so serious on either side. If the allegations are true, it's serious. It's not comical. If the allegations are a lie, it's serious. It's not comical, but it's almost become a satire where it's like, pick a guy who's going to stand up and has the chance to, you know, be confirmed into a powerful position like Secretary of Defense. And you can just count the seconds before some woman is levying a sexual allegation against him. Now, the flip side to this culture is the one that they have in Muslim countries, which I also don't agree with, right? Where, 3 men have to have witnessed and testify to a rape for it to be rape. You know, did you know that was a standard in?
I did not know that.
Yeah, in Muslim countries.
Dang.
Look it up exactly. I don't want to misquote, but I think it's something like 3, maybe 5. But, you know, for a woman to say that a man raped her in Muslim states, Muslim countries, there have to be other men that testify to it, that witness it or testify to it. I believe that's a standard. I know it is in the Muslim tradition. I'm not sure which countries still observe it and which ones don't. But the point is, go ahead, Tanner.
It looks like it's kind of been reworked a couple of times, but as it stands right now, a nice way of thinking about it is a woman's testimony is half a man's.
Okay. So now, okay. Now, I don't agree with that. You know, a woman's testimony being half a man's is, but see, again, this goes all the way, this harkens back to what I said in the beginning about how delicate the integrity of justice really is, right? I mean, it's crazy how all the shit, you know, comes together. I swear we don't plan this shit. Things are connected, which is why you have to deal with the details and the nuance, because the devil is in the details. Justice, a justice system, the integrity of a justice system is a very delicate thing. And, you know, in their part of the world, in their culture, in their tradition, you know, they've cautioned on the side of error where they trust men more than they trust women. And, you know, there's a lot of people here, even in the, you know, in the American conservative movement or even in the MAGA movement that say, you know, we need to repeal women's right to vote because of how badly Marxists and communists and the mainstream media that Pete Hegseth is talking about has hijacked the you know, women and the feminist movement and has used the feminist movement. I don't agree with that. Why don't I agree with that? Because I know plenty of women who support Donald Trump. I know plenty of women who have conservative values. I know plenty of women who believe in having a border in a country. So, you know, you can't make sweeping decisions like that because you end up penalizing people who don't deserve it, and that's unjust as well. But at the same time, we've run into a crisis here in this country when it comes to men, women, the sexual dynamic between the two, and the implications and the consequences for us as a nation. I mean, imagine had Donald Trump actually lost, and for whatever reason, the narrative that the mainstream media tried to spin stuck about Jean Carroll and the other people who have accused him of sexual improprieties or whatever you want to call them. The women who have come out and accused him. Imagine if we had actually elected Kamala Harris and Cardi B to run this country because of that. And it's not like it wasn't close. It wasn't close in the electoral, but it was too close for me. How about you, Tanner?
I'm sorry, I was reading. I want to correct myself earlier. It's four men.
4 men.
4 men have to eyewitness the penetration for it to be actually believed.
Hey, now that's intense.
Yeah.
I mean, because the obvious pitfall there is what? Any man with half a brain is going to be smart enough to carry out some type of sexual assault or rape in alone, where there are no other eyewitnesses. I mean, that's probably the first standard of a sexual predator is I'm going to get you alone. I mean, not often. Don't get me wrong. There are some real sickos out there that are raping women in public, right? Or try to rape women in public. I mean, that's what that law is more for. Is like, okay, this dude ran on the train, grabbed this woman, dragged her down, and raped her in front of everybody, and we all saw it. Okay, that's what that law is for. But it's not for, the real, sophisticated sexual predator who's actually luring women into some, I don't know, place that's not visible and knocking them over the head or, drugging them or whatever the case may be and raping them. That law in the Muslim world is not going to cover for that type of situation. But again, I mean, the reality is when it's a man's word versus a woman's word shouldn't have half, the value, shouldn't be half of a testimony, but it also shouldn't be more than one, right? I think we've gotten to and this was the Me Too culture, right? This was the Me Too movement was, okay, you got a man and a woman who were alone, and they say they have different stories of what took place. And women as a whole, societally, culturally, in a given community, are going to come together and say that the overall mistreatment and let's say tyranny or oppression of women by men historically is enough to justify that we should believe every woman on a one-to-one base, in a he say, she say situation. There's nothing remotely appropriate about that. I mean, that's almost as the failure of logic in that is almost as ridiculous as the guy dressed up with the pink glasses. Seriously. One looks more ridiculous, ridiculous on face value. One looks strange, But all in all, it's the same level of absurd that we should just believe all women because historically women are so oppressed by men. You kidding me? I mean, what world? And it's not just Republicans either. I mean, they'll take their shot at Democrats. Remember now, I'm going into a Senate race against Tina Smith, who only got appointed to be the United States Senator here in Minnesota because Al Franken resigned under controversy of a similar sexual scandal or sexual allegations, who was a Democrat, and a very important Democrat at that, one who was very loved and sort of adored by the Democrat Party and the DNC establishment. And they took him out. You know, he's resurfaced now. I think he might make another run at something. But, you know, they took Al Franken out through this Me Too movement as well. And they went after Joe Biden with it. And they went after Bill Clinton with it. And so it's not a partisan thing, but it is a big problem. And now they're going after Pete Hegseth, and I hate to see it. And there has been no real evidence provided whatsoever to suggest that any of these allegations against Pete are true. And if no evidence, no hardcore evidence ever surfaces, then these things should stay exactly where they are. Nowhere. And that's where they are now. They're nowhere. They're only somewhere because Donald Trump wanted to appoint Pete, and the Democrats are very, very bitter about losing. And the mainstream media will you know, grab at whatever straws they can to try and railroad or derail Donald Trump's presidency and the people who he's trying to put in office. Next video.
Have you heard the scary breaking news out of Washington and Oregon? Well, Northern Oregon to be specific. They are finding these parasitic creature critters in the water in the whole state of Washington and parts of Oregon, as I mentioned. This is a high concentration of them, of what they look like. But typically, if you turn on your faucet, there's only a few of them in your glass, and they'll cling to the bottom or to the side, so you don't notice them. But people are drinking them up without noticing. And scientists don't know what they are. They've never seen them before. But so far they show that they're harmless. They see that when they get to the stomach, they get into the bloodstream and make their way up to the brain, where they hang out and drink just a little bit of blood to nourish themselves. But it's not going to hurt the human. It's a little bit of blood, but they don't know long term what the effects are. And so they're going to follow them closely and see. But I'm curious, those from Washington and Northern Oregon, have you seen them in your water? Are you buying store-bought water? How is the general public doing with this?
Yeah, well, this is scary. New parasites, novel parasites that scientists, quote unquote, don't recognize or can't identify. Yeah, Mother Nature is scary. Yeah, but so is technology. And my first thought is, as a U.S. Senate candidate, national security, right? Are there people, domestically or foreign, that are potentially bringing these biological war weapons, which is what they could be, into our country? This is another problem. This is another problem about having an open border. When you got 10,000 Chinese nationals who are military-aged men just coming across your border. Not to say that women couldn't, carry out some international espionage missions like this as well, because women are capable of doing it. But, when you just let 10,000 Chinese nationals who are military-aged men come across your border, you're basically saying, we don't care what happens, right? It's like, it's a free-for-all. Whatever happens, happens, which is crazy to then turn around and go, these January 6th protesters are the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of this country. It's like, no, I'd say if these mysterious parasites end up being a biological war weapon that spread and kill, let's just say on the conservative side, 1 million Americans, I would say that's the worst thing that's ever. I would say that a virus that Donald Trump tried to stop the spread of by shutting down the flights, the international flights, back when COVID-19 first, broke out. I would say the millions of people who succumbed to complications or to COVID-19, the virus, I would say that's one of the worst things that's ever happened in this country, right? I mean, on January 6th, there was there was an event. Some people call it a riot. Some people would take it too far as to call it an insurrection. And now we're seeing that Donald Trump executive order to pardon the January 6th protesters. And I hear, I see, I read that the D.C. jail, prison, where they're holding the January 6th protesters, refuses to release them. Might be the first, one of the first heavy knocks on a door that happens in this President Trump term, where we got to send some force in to make sure that people are compliant with the authority of the executive branch. But, a few people died on January 6th. A few people. One person, really. Babbitt, was shot. Some other people may have died later on due to injuries or whatever the case may be. I'm not even sure on the number, but 1 million people died from a virus that a House subcommittee now has declared came from Wuhan, from a lab in Wuhan, spread from Wuhan. Did the Chinese government send us a bioweapon? I don't know. Many would argue, well, COVID-19 had a huge impact and death toll there in China as well. That doesn't really vindicate the Chinese. We often talk about on this podcast the danger of the Chinese people and the CCP, not the danger of the Chinese people, but the danger of the CCP in the Chinese culture, in that it's a very ancient culture and it has a very ancient viewpoint towards its own existence and its own place in the world. And that, the mandate from heaven, which is a very ancient Chinese doctrine or sort of faith. It is kind of a religious cultural idea in the Chinese culture. The mandate from heaven is that the Chinese people themselves are a religion. And the supremacy of China or the Chinese culture is a religion. And so we attribute a love for China and the Chinese people by its leaders. But in actuality, it may be something much darker and more sinister, where the Chinese leaders, the CCP, have such a strong belief in China's supremacy that they're actually willing to sacrifice their own people in order to achieve it. Does that make sense, Tanner?
Yeah, I think so.
What I'm saying is, in China, the mandate of heaven says that the Chinese people will rule, that the Chinese people deserve to rule, that they're genetically different. Okay, you being a white young man, they call it Guaylo, right? In China, they're just as racist against white people as they are against black people, really. Black, obviously black people traditionally find themselves to be looked at as less than all around the world since the theories of social Darwinism came to prominence. But the point is that the Chinese people culturally have a historical traditional doctrine that says China is meant to rule, that the Chinese people are the religion, and that China is meant to be supreme. Now, some of that's proven itself to be true because China is ascending into supremacy, a sort of global supremacy. Now, the Christians are fighting that. I mean, the West and the Christianity, we're saying, no, that's not a divine appointment. But what I'm saying is that the Chinese leadership, we often attribute this profound sense of love and care and responsibility for China and its people that its leaders exhibit, which in some ways they do. President Xi is much more of a nationalist leader than Joe Biden or other leaders that we see around the world. What I'm saying is the caveat is there may be that China's leaders have such a profound belief in China's supremacy that they're willing to sacrifice their own people to achieve that supremacy. In which case, and you see that a lot of times in epic wars, right? It was like, yeah, I believe in Great Britain. I believe in America. I believe in India. I believe in Australia. I believe in South Africa. I believe in Egypt. I believe in Persia. I believe in whatever it is so much that we'll sacrifice 1 million Persians in order to win, right? So in terms of biological warfare, I only say that to say, in terms of biological warfare, it is not a vindication of China that COVID-19 also killed a lot of Chinese people. And a great example of this is China, America, we have what people would say is an abhorrent abortion history where we've, some 60 to 70 million children have been aborted since the 1960s here in this country. In China, it's 400 million. 400 plus million abortions, and some of them were government forced. Never forget the one-child policy that took place there in China that is, decimated the demographic there between men and women, so much so now they've had to take measures to reverse it. But all I'm saying is we don't know what happened yet still with COVID-19. Even though now it would appear that there's a scientific consensus about the origin, which was in China, in Wuhan, we still don't know if it was intentional or not. We don't know. I mean, honestly. Now, people in my crew of the MAGA world would say, yeah, it was intentional. Whose intent? That we still don't know. Was it China alone? The Chinese government? Was it a rogue faction in the Chinese government? Is there a rogue faction in the Chinese government and the American government that worked together to do it? Was it a super what they call a transnational shadow government, rogue organization, collaboration between private players and government officials, or let's say deep state people who collaborated to do it? These are questions that are still out there, and they're still out there about a lot of diseases and viruses and vaccines and medical-based things that have popped up over generations. We have huge unanswered questions about a lot of this stuff. Scary. But when I see a video of a parasite that scientists can't identify, a brand new parasite, my first thought is maybe these parasites were dropped off. Maybe on some small, who knows how much they multiply, how quick they multiply. I guess they're going to study and follow it and see. But maybe these parasites were planted in these water sources. And who knows how quick they, multiply. Who knows if this, and then there's the whole issue, Tanner, of trying to decipher what, people go to doomsday quick. They go, oh, this is going to be the parasite that wipes out half of America. Maybe not. Maybe they're just testing shit. Maybe when you see the chemtrails, it's not meant as a mass, inoculation of some type of chemical warfare. Maybe they're just testing shit still, And maybe this parasite is an example of that. Maybe this is supposed to meant to be constrained to a small sample size of people that has already been accounted for. This parasite has the ability to multiply to this level, and we have a pretty good grasp on what the fallout's going to be. I remember in the earliest days of the pandemic, the numbers that were projected of how many deaths there would be were eerily similar to the amount of deaths it ended up being. and when you go back and you retroactively try and analyze, the situation and say, well, there were people who were, gain of function research a factor in the pandemic or in the virus, and then you think to yourself, maybe there are people out there sinister enough to know exactly how many people a virus is going to kill or affect and follow through with it just to experiment. Which makes me concerned to see Donald Trump take a meeting with Bill Gates. I'm just going to say that to everybody out there. Support the president 100%. I'm happy that he was sworn in. I'm excited about the executive orders that have taken place. Bill Gates is a fucking scumbag, okay? This is a motherfucker who can't be trusted. I don't care how good of a business he built. I don't care how big of a business he built. I don't give a shit about any of that. This is a motherfucker who can't be trusted. His belief in himself and in science is unworthy of the American people and American citizenship, the trust of American citizenship. You know, and again, they said it earlier in the now we're going to start vaccinating people at mass based on their individual cancer predispositions. It's like, or maybe you're just dropping some payload off in me that's going to kill me individually based on my individual DNA and genetics. I mean, how do we know?
And they expect that everybody's going to have cancer. Like the way they talk about it, just everybody's going to have it.
Yeah, why are we even, that's a great point, Tanner. Why are they even starting from the preset that everybody's going to get cancer anyway? Excuse me? I mean, a lot of people get cancer. A lot of people do die from cancer. I'm not saying, but it's not the number one cause of death in America.
Yeah, let's find the why is cancer being caused.
Let's just be real. Cancer is not the number one cause of death in this country. Heart disease is the number one cause of death in this country. I've been sick, as you can probably hear. I'm all nasally and congested, and Tanner's got a cough, and, you know, you got the bugs going around. It's -20. When it hits -20, people get sick. It is what it is. But I went through the natural progression of a common cold, right? My throat was scratchy. Then I had the post-nasal drip. My throat was sore. It was hurting. I started coughing a little bit. Used the throat lozenges or cough drops to suppress the cough. Cough was suppressed. I wasn't coughing. But then my chest started to be a little tight because all of that congestion and shit is getting stuck in there and it's not being expelled. And then as the virus calms down, the immune system starts to work. The symptoms are relieved, and all of a sudden, a couple of days later, I'm coughing the stuff up that I suppressed. Point being, people get sick. People get colds. People get cancer. They do. But what I came to find out was I'm a little bit of a hypochondriac, so I'm stupid enough to have all of my vital machines on hand at home. I don't got to run to the ER or the doctor to get my vitals. I can take my own vitals, which a lot of Americans should actually have that at home, just in case. You should be able to take your own vitals at home. You don't need to go to the doctor to check your blood pressure and your oxygen. So I check it, and my blood pressure was a little high, and I spent about 20 minutes doing a deep breathing exercise, just your typical standard deep breathing exercise. And I was able to bring my blood pressure down 20 plus points. Now, that was a shock to me. It's not like I didn't know deep breathing can, have an effect on the blood pressure in the body, but in the hustle and bustle of modern American society and culture, you kind of lose, you lose sight of it, right? Of how powerful the mind is and breathing is, and how brilliant God designed the body, the powers that we have over our own health. I say that because even I was taken aback by it so much, I had to look into it again. I had to go back and look at some research, and you find that cardiovascular disease, blood pressure, hypertension are some of the main killers of people in this country. And that meditation and deep breathing has a proven effectiveness on lowering blood pressure, the same as statins, as blood pressure medication. Blood pressure medication is some of the most prescribed medication in the entire country. And you wonder to yourself, if everybody's so predisposed to all of these things like cancer, well, obviously the diet that we eat in this country predisposes to high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease. So why are we not taught in elementary school, in junior high, in high school, in college, in our workplace? Why are we not given time, 30 minutes a day, just to be able to meditate and exercise deep breathing as a safeguard or a tool against high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease? And they would rather give you the medicine. See, because nobody gets paid if you cure it yourself. Nobody gets paid if you treat the high blood pressure and hypertension and cardiovascular disease on your own. And that is the great scam that we're dealing with in this country when it comes to health and medicine, and it's just a great example. Take 30 seconds out of the day. You got high blood pressure, you're stressed, heart disease. 30 minutes, it says. 30 minutes, proven. If you deep breathe for 30 minutes, even 5 minutes, improves the blood pressure overall. Do it. Do it. That's great. A lot of people are on blood pressure, and that blood pressure medication is strong. It fucks up your kidneys. It's kind of a hit and miss. You got to kind of trial and error to figure out the right combination of the blood pressure medication. And usually once you go on blood pressure medication, you're on it for the rest of your life, right? So if we can get around stuff like that, we should. I don't mean to monologue or diatribe about this, but I go back to say Bill Gates is a scumbag. These tech guys, these vaccine, medical industrial complex oligarchs and shit, these people are scumbags. We should with the utmost caution, be watching these people and dealing with these people. And we got to watch our borders. Let's not be assuming that every virus, new virus, or common cold, or parasite that pops up in the water is organic. That's proven now. Donald Trump and the rest of the MAGA movement, we are right to be skeptical because biological warfare is a thing. We've broken that seal. So we got to be vigilant. Is that the last video?
Yeah, it's the last clip.
That was the last clip. Good. Ran a little over today. We appreciate you being here again for this reactions episode, Reactions News Wednesday episode. I apologize for my voice, my nasal congestion. Really struggling with it today during this show. Not until you try to talk for an hour straight do you feel the real condition of your nasal passages. Hopefully we got through anyway, and I appreciate your viewership and listenership today and in the future. Again, congratulations to Donald Trump, 47th President of the United States of America. Congratulations to the entire Trump family, this incoming administration. We support your executive order use. Drastic times call for drastic measures. Let's be thoughtful and mindful of playing tit for tat with lawfare. Some people do deserve to pay for their crimes. Truth Commission will be better. More valuable that we find out the deepest, darkest secrets of what's been set in motion here in the country versus retribution. Because ultimately, it would be my guess, whatever's been set in motion has a much longer runway than the gratification we'll get from putting individual people in jail, right? If you assume that Dr. Fauci is really acting on his own behalf, then I would say you're probably a fool. Not saying Dr. Fauci's a good dude. He's an asshole. But you don't do the kind of things Dr. Fauci has done on your own accord. Somebody signed off on it. Somebody was involved. Somebody conspired. Somebody collaborated. And whoever those people are have kept themselves far from the limelight, and I would assume they've done that intentionally. And one of the reasons is whatever plans they have, whatever they plan to do, still in motion. Still has a chance of success, rebooted, reformatted, repurposed, reorganized. Dr. Fauci, again, could easily become a scapegoat and a fall guy. We place everything on him, not realizing the people behind him, behind the curtain, working on the same thing. And here, this could be an example. Yeah, we hit you with a virus. Came out of a Wuhan lab. Remember they said it was a bat, the wet market. Now we got a mysterious parasite making it into the drinking water for the people there in Washington and Oregon. Democrat states, by the way, mind you. I don't mean to make it political, but that just happens to be a fact of where these parasites are being found. So a lot of things to think about. Stay vigilant. Stay in the mix. Continue to watch, listen. We appreciate your support and viewership again. We got Hotep Jesus on deck this week. Trying to work in a time to get Hotep Jesus on the podcast as our family and friends guest. He and I are going back and forth about schedule right now, so plan on that being either this week or in the coming episodes. If we get a guest that is going to do it on a Sunday, we'll run a guest episode on Monday, because we want the conversation to be current. And I'll run 3 guest episodes in a row, and we may do that. We may have to miss Monday and Wednesday's regular format to give you the guests. So that's what's coming up this week. And we didn't get to Hebrews last week. Hopefully we get to it this week. Professor Penn, busy as ever. Me, I've been sick the last 4 days, so I'm doing the best I can to come in and do the podcast for you. In February, I'm scheduled to be on the Hodge Twins podcast. Headed out to Las Vegas with the Hodge Twins, who I like a lot. 2 very good American patriots, very funny guys. I'm excited to go out and be on their podcast, their platform. They got a really big podcast. So drop a tag in the comments for the Hodge Twins to let them know Royce is announced that he's planning on coming on the Hodge Twins podcast. I think it's sometime in middle of February. So that should be fun. That's it for me, guys. I appreciate your viewership and listenership again today and in the future. TireGet.com, our sponsor. Make sure you go to TireGet.com if you need tires. Promo code is FPR. You get 3% off your final purchase. Go to FreePeopleRadio.com. Buy a T-shirt, buy a mug. We got playing cards. We got hoodies. We got all kinds of merchandise, and we're going to get some more merchandise up in the coming weeks here in the new year. That's it for me. Remember, the Please Call Me Crazy podcast, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 p.m. Central. Subscribe, hit the like button, comment, share. Professor Penn podcast, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7:30 p.m. Central. I'm thinking about moving my podcast time. Yeah, I'm thinking about moving my time to about 7. 7 on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays. Back when I started the podcast, I was in very good standing with Jason Whitlock, and I didn't, his aired at 6 p.m. Central every day. And I didn't want to be in the way of that or, airing at the same time. He and I obviously don't have the same relationship, so I don't have the same courtesy for the show. Wish him the best as a person. But, we took the late hour out of just being good to the show and to the crew. So we might rethink that. Drop in the comments if you'd like the show to air earlier, if that would better suit your schedule. I tend to think people, watch the show when everything else is done at night. Because a lot of people are still up watching television at 9 p.m. I usually am. So, I tend to think that the late hour allows people the freedom and space to, watch the show after everything else is done. And obviously you can always watch it back if you want as well. We get a huge crowd there on the Rumble audience, on War Room, on the Getter audience. So shout out to the War Room Posse audience, everybody in the chats. I hope you like the reaction show to the podcast today. We'll see you on Friday. Godspeed. The fight continues. Everything's up on the bar. We're all in. We get to decide. Do you want to live on your knees or do you want to die on your feet fighting? That's the decision you get to make now.